over the years. These scissors will last for 25 or 30 years. This pair, which I left on the table, but in desperation someone can use, you'll notice that the blade is broken, spent about 8 to 10 years in the compost pile. Which is why they look the way they do today. But they're still cutting when I finally found them. Now, this is my husband, and his name is Ned, and he's spent his entire life as a graphic designer. And when I had a retail shop, bless him, he would come and help out in the shop, and one day I found him throwing away, like, these are no good, throwing them. I said, what are you doing? He said, they don't cut paper. Well, he's right. They don't cut paper, and they don't cut ribbon. So when we get to the ribbon part, these are ribbon scissors. All right, these will cut ribbon. These will not cut ribbon, but they will cut all your stems tonight. If they're brand new, they'll just trim the corners of your fingers off too, if you're not careful with them, because they are very sharp and they stay sharp.
What make are those?
Now, well, that's where I'm headed. Now, you can buy these under the name in kitchen stores as well as garden centers, as you can buy these under the brand name of Joyce Chen scissors, all right? They look, you know, this is what they look like. Sometimes they come in a larger size, but the larger size isn't the size that you want for this kind of work. There's no need for a larger size. These are very sharp. And they last for a good long time. It's nice to have the bright red handles if you're somebody like me who's constantly losing things, like, oh my God, where did I put it, kind of thing. Yes, that's it, and that's why these ended up in the compost. Yeah, because, but if you can find these, and you can find them online, they actually are sharper. And they actually, I think, cut better than these do. So every time I lose a pair of these at what's called the wholesale market in Boston for florists, which I sometimes doubt that their prices are wholesale, I pay $25 a pair for these. I asked my garden center to see if they could find some of these, and they did, and I ended up paying a retail price of $22 for these. So check garden centers, and I don't mean big box stores. I mean a garden center, independent garden. So check an independent garden center, or kitchen stores, or independent garden center, or if there's a big florist shop that you go to, or a garden center that has a florist shop. And if one thing that you can do is, if you go to a garden center or a garden center that has a florist shop, you can kind of stand and watch and see what they use to cut things with. And I'll bet you'll notice that a lot of them use these, because they really are good. Okay, so I will give those back to this table, and anybody that, when the time comes, you know, I can use these. Oh, please come in. We have 2 extra chairs. Yeah. You're welcome. That's all right. Come right in and sit down. So, and it may or may not, see, you brought, oh, you guys need these, I have these, because, it, you know, you
And Tussie with you.
once you get going, I will let somebody use this if you need them, okay? So this is, actually, I was surprised when you said, well, let's do Tussie Mussies, because, but so many people have read the book. How many people here have read The Language of Flowers? The book, The Language of Flowers. Well, I thought you would all pop your hands right there, because that's been an extremely popular book in the last 2 years. Extremely popular. It's the story of a young woman who's sort of, I actually never did read it. My husband read it. All my friends read it. They kept giving it to me and saying, you've got to read this. And I started going, I know. But it's basically the story of a young woman who found her way basically into the world of through working with flowers and learning about the symbolic meanings of flowers. Now, in that book, from what I saw, a lot of the symbolism that is traditional to the language of flowers was changed. But that is totally in keeping with how things have evolved in the language of flowers or floral symbolism over the years. For as long as human beings have been using cut plant material, there have been meanings attached to that plant material as it was being used. The oldest recorded meanings, you can trace them back 1,000, 2,000 years of references to, rosemary is a symbol of remembrance, or rue, which is an herb, is the symbol of vision, virtue, and virginity. A lot of the older meanings in the language of flowers, a lot of the meanings that trace back 1,000 or more years, I've come to believe over the years are actually encapsulated references to the use of that particular plant, to its medicinal and or religious use. And there's some pretty good examples of that. What's happened is that Shakespeare used a lot of floral symbolism in all of his work, and all the poets and the playwrights from the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century did. Along about the middle of the 19th century, things changed very suddenly in the little tiny world of floral symbolism, because plant explorers and collectors were sent out, were paid to go out from the great plant societies in Europe, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Men really. There was a woman who snuck along, but that's another story I won't tell you right now. But men were paid to go out and spend a year, 2, 3, 4 years collecting unusual plants and bringing them back to the West. And they headed to the Far East that had been newly opened to Western commerce, and they began collecting plants. And one of the plants that got collected, actually quite illegally, because it violated a treaty agreement, was a shrub of rose that we're all familiar with, and that's the rugosa rose.
Oh, yeah.
The beach rose, what I grew up with as the beach rose. All right, I grew up with those roses blooming on the beach every June, and our teacher or our Girl Scout leader would take us, march us down to the beach, and we would all have our sketch pads, and we would sit and sketch the beach roses. That's all we knew. They were beach roses, the fragrant beach roses. That's actually native to Nagasaki in Japan, and shortly after Nagasaki was opened, that was the port of entry to Japan from the West, and shortly after Nagasaki was open to Western trade with the West, it was against all treaty regulations for any Westerner to leave a certain area, right in the port area. And they had to pledge not to take any plant material with them. Well, somebody cut a slip, took a cutting of one of those beach roses, brought it back to New England, and that was the beginning of our beach rose, our multiflora roses. So that's the kind of thing that started happening. All this plant material started cascading in from all over Asia, from parts of the world that the West had been totally unfamiliar with, and there were no meanings attached to them, no Western meanings. So it became quite fashionable around 1840, 1850 for these little bouquets to start being made and given to people to convey meanings, to convey sentiment. And as people, their seats right here, and as the plant material started pouring in and was propagated and was dispersed, first among the upper classes and then trickling down to folks like us to plant at their yards. Little books were written, about that big, just about that big. And the little books, one of them that I have published in 1840, says, I have taken it upon myself to assign symbolic meanings to the following flowers, so that the authors, who the majority of whom were women, assigned meanings to all this new plant material. So then you had all these additions to the language of flowers, to floral symbolism, and you also had what started as a court activity for the queen and her ladies in waiting, of making little tiny bouquets and putting them together so that when they were handed quietly off to somebody, there could be a secret message passed. You see? And it became quite fashionable. These little books, these little language of flower books, sold like hotcakes. And it was the young men and young women through the middle class of all over Western Europe and the United States that absolutely leapt on them. Because in those days, young men and young women were not allowed to mingle together, let alone, do much of anything but nod in church on Sundays or smile over the gate as one was walking by and the other was working on the other side of the gate. So this was a marvelous way for them to send secret messages to each other. So in this book, you read the most wonderful little stories about how if a young man was interested in a young woman, but it was completely against all social norms for the young man to go, Mary Jane here, want to go for a walk? How'd you like to go for a soda? That was not, the parents would have thrown that kid out of the yard so fast it wasn't even funny. But if he purchased one of the little books, and this is an example, but this one was originally published about 1890, so this is a larger one. But the little ones could slip into apron pockets quite nicely for young women, and could also slip into inside vest pockets for young men. And everybody, all the young people owned them, and a young man could make up this little nosegay, walk by the house, and just drop something on the front step and just keep going, not even look down. And the young woman, suspecting that something like that might happen, could be watching from a window, and as soon as he was out of sight, she could go outdoors and pick it up and get her book and immediately open it and see what it was. Depending on what the question was, she could then, if she had the time, go for a walk herself. And she could carry her little nosegay like this, and it would mean one thing, or she could wear it like this, and it would mean something else, or she could take it right there, it would mean something else. Or she could do this. Because one of the really fun things about the language of flowers and floral symbolism is that it's just as easy to tell somebody to drop dead as it is to tell them that you just absolutely adore them, that you really love them, or that you admire them, or that you wish that you could be like them, or that you're happy to have them as a friend, or whatever. So it's lots of fun to look into this. Now, as I said a little bit earlier, there are books that even today will take plant material and assign whole new meanings to it. But a lot of our traditional plant material has these symbolic meanings that have been associated with them since, for thousands of years. And this book is a superb reference book. This book was brought out, privately published maybe 20 years ago, and it's still available in secondhand editions, but I think also from Kathleen's shop in Ohio. She has a herb shop in Ohio. But this is called Flora's Dictionary, and this is a compilation of dozens of the little language of flower books from the mid to late 19th century, because you would find different meanings for the same plant in some of those books. So this is a compilation, and actually probably the best reference book there is, because she worked in some pretty good history with some of the plant material here. This is a book that came out, again, probably at least 25 years ago. And this is the history of Tussie Mussie's, pretty much focusing on Victorian use of Tussie Mussies. And it was the Victorian use of Tussie Mussies was really, really extensive. I mean, it was this, and a Tussie Mussie, a basic definition, which you have here in your handout of a Tussie Mussie, is a handheld nosegay in which all the plant material has a symbolic meaning. The first time that the earliest recording of the term Tussie Mussie, and nobody knows it, right here. Do come sit down. We have a seat right there, and you can slip right into it. Oh, I'm sorry, no, we don't have an
Where
extra.
did we?
Yeah, she was
There's
probably
probably
more in the
more.
corner.
That little girl.
It's
But
okay. Oh, that's
we have.
Take it for now.
Okay, well,
Just
sit there for
Get
now. I'm
comfortable.
sorry.
Sit, enjoy the show.
I didn't even think.
Please sit down.
But there
You can
are,
arrange
no,
something.
but there's plenty. There's plenty, don't worry. There's seats right here.
No, come sit.
I'm very sorry. That was not good. Tea dances were very popular during the Victorian era, and these little nosegays were used at tea dances. And this is a picture of a Tussie Mussie holder. And today, should you ever come across an antique one, should you ever come across one at a garage sale, and you're pretty sure that it's an antique because there have been a lot of copies in the last few years, these are now worth thousands of dollars. They were in sterling silver, and as you explained, some of them had little feet, so that at the tea dance, when you sat down at the table, ladies wore long skirts, and when they sat down, they had to swish like this. And they couldn't sit in chairs with arms, they always had to sit in chairs like that, so that their skirts could go over the side of the chair. And then they would take their Tussie Mussie holder and release the little feet and stand it up on the table so they didn't have to lay it down. You don't have that luxury tonight, you're gonna have to lay it down. But anyway, this is a beautifully done book, photography-wise, and the history is fascinating. And the library may very well have it, and if they don't, I know they can get it for you. There are all kinds of gorgeous, gorgeous examples of Tussie Mussies in here. Some with lace, some with no lace, just, really beautiful ones. So that's lots of fun to know about. And then this little guy, right here, has been printed and reprinted. It's Kate Greenaway was a very early illustrator of children's books, beginning about, 1880 or so, 1890. And she did lovely illustrations. And this is a Language of Flowers book that came out, as I say, I think this first came out around 1890 or 1900. And pretty much it's been reprinted and reprinted and reprinted and reprinted. So it's very easy to find, and it's lots of fun to have. And if you have a garden, and if you're lucky enough to have children in your life, this is grand to have on hand because everybody can use it. And you can actually do this and head out into the garden with it and really have a good time trying to figure out. And it really is a great way to express emotions. There's no question about that. And truly, if you're annoyed with somebody and you can just look at it right in here, put together a little bouquet, and they don't have to know you're annoyed. It makes you feel much better if you can just, say that, I don't know, your spouse has annoyed you, or your child has annoyed you, or your parent has annoyed you. You can just drop something there. You don't have to tell them what it means. And they might say, oh, thank you for the bouquet. And you can say sweetly, you're welcome. Feel ever so much better about what's going on. So. Okay, now, and feel free to ask questions as we go on. I brought you 2 handouts. This is from one of the books that I've written called Planning Your Herbal Wedding. And this is a reprint of one of the pages in there, the Bride's Floral Dictionary, which it's just a nice thing to have. This gives you a jump start place. A place to start with flowers and herbs and flowers that are pretty much available, depending on what you grow and what's available by the side of the road and what's available in your local florist shop. And this little, I'll put my glasses on because I'd like to read this to you. This little poem showed up in my workshop years and years and years ago, back when we were making quite a number of Tussie Mussies. We made them for Valentine's Day, lots of them for Valentine's Day. We did them for weddings. We made them for Mother's Day. We made them for friends' birthdays. Customers would come in and order them. And then one day, the woman appeared in my workshop and she said, I've just been going through a lot of old papers and I found this poem and I thought you might like it because I know you make Tussie Mussies. This is the poem right here. And it's just, it really does define how the Victorians felt about their Tussie Mussies and their little handheld nosegays. Take rosemary for memories of happy times together, lavender for solitude in times of stormy weather. Scented leaf geraniums bring a breath of old sachets and dreams of quiet parlors with sunny plant-lined bays. Tuck in a bit of gray-green sage for wisdom and long life, and yarrow flowers for courage when days seem filled with strife, and rosebuds as reminders that the bonds of love are strong when times together are too short and times apart too long. Attach a special message that will gladden someone's day. Surround with lace and loving thoughts and send it on its way. Is that right? That's I mean, that's the power of flowers, right? The power of plant material, if you know what it says, if you're able. No, it's beautiful. So I thought you might like that. You can copy it and use it any way you want because we have no idea who wrote it, where it came from, and I just thought so. Okay, now here's what's going to be happening. All right. Now, when you make a Tussie Mussie, there is a pattern that you follow. Traditionally, you put the single most important meaning in the center, and then you build out from there. And traditionally, you use multiples of the same flower, and you work in as much of a circular pattern as you possibly can. The traditional Tussie Mussie was designed long before Winston opened its first store, because it's Winston that does all the blocking of, 12 carnations and 12 mums and 12 this and 12 that, and there you have a flower arrangement. But for a Tussie Mussie, you try to work, if you can, and then you can't always do it, in a circular pattern, all right? So here we have rosemary, that's the first that will go in, then roses, then the tulips, then I believe I put in the baby's breath next, some baby's breath, then the carnations, then the scented geranium, and then a little bit of fern. So that, and you start here and you build down as you're going. Now, I'm going to move this out of the way, and let me get the books out of the way. I do want to talk about this, but I'm going to wait until you're working to talk about that. Because, oh, thank you. Put this over here. Yeah, they can stay there, just as long as they're not in people's way. But, so, when you begin work, it is a wise thing, I'll put this on the floor, to lay your plant material out in front of you so that you know who's on first and what's coming next. So, with that in mind, I'm going to put my rosemary here, then my roses, then my tulips, then my baby's breath, then my carnations, then my scented geranium, and finally, last but not least, my herbs. And now, if everybody can just watch, well, because what I'm going to do is make one right now for you. You don't have any. You don't. I'll get it for you.
Okay.
Let me make it, and
That's
then
okay.
because there's plenty over here.
Okay.
All right.
Great.
And yeah, you need rubber bands too. But you can steal from somebody else until I get them to you.
I have one on my wrist.
So that you begin by just holding your 3 pieces of rosemary together like this. And you would like to have all the tips just at the same level. Now, some of you will have rosemary, the tips are looking a little floppy. That's because it was cut when I got back from the market. I cut it, put it in water, and these are tender tips that have just fainted a little bit because they haven't hardened off yet. So my recommendation is that you take thumb and and don't do it now, just if you can just watch me, thumb and forefinger, and you're going to remove those tips. Now, for me, I would never let a piece of rosemary escape. So this is all perfectly good rosemary to take home and use. So, you know, you may throw it away, but you can also take it home and use it in cooking. Then each one of these, if you notice how tall the stem is, each one of these stems you want to strip down so that you have about 3 inches left. Because that's the part that's going to form the heart of your Tussie Mussie, right there. And I'm going to strip this all down. Now, you cannot order rosemary. This comes in from California in short pieces. So this is how it comes, and this is how you deal with it. Then I'm holding these 3 stems together. I'm going to trim right there, like that, exactly like that. Next, I'm going to take my roses, and these are spray roses. The ancestors of these spray roses came from China. And you see right here where a rose has been removed, I'm going to snip that and clean it so that I don't have a naked stem. And you see how I'm removing, and I am fitting my roses around my rosemary. Can you see that? Mm-hmm. So that the 3 stems, I want the rosemary to be up in the middle, and the tops of the roses are a little bit below where the rosemary. And again, I'm going to trim, because now I can continue on, put it all together and put a rubber band on at the end, but it could drive me and you crazy. So here is a handy dandy trick for any handheld nosegay. If somebody brings you a bouquet of flowers and you go, oh, what am I going to do with it? This is how you make a handheld nosegay. You simply begin with something in the middle. You put a few stems around it. If it's too big for you to hold in your hand, if it feels if it's slipping and you want to control it, just run a rubber band right up there. Hold it in place. Now I have the beginnings of my nosegay. Now I'm going to, I think I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to put one tulip here, and very carefully remove this so I don't break the head of the tulip. Put another tulip here, and another tulip here. And I'm going to pull these down so that I get to see the tulip flowers, but I still have my rosemary coming up in the center. And again, I'm holding the 3 stems in place. I'm cutting them off so that everything's the same length. And I think because the tulip stems are sort of big and round, I'm just going to put another rubber band on right there and push that up and hold those guys in place, just like that. So that's the first 3 ingredients. Then I can safely put that down and trim off pieces of baby's breath. Now, when you hold your baby's breath up in front of you, you will see, and by the way, baby's breath has a wonderful fragrance if you're going to put your nose in it. You'll see that it grows naturally in sprays. Now, this is the piece of baby's breath right here. This is the cluster that I'm going to be seeing in my nosegay. I don't want that there because that's just going to gum up the interior works. I want a nice naked stem like that. And then right here, I'm going to, can you see right here? That lovely cluster? There's another cluster there, but I'm going to trim this one off, just like that. And that gives me a longer stem on that cluster. And then that leaves me with this cluster. It's fun to have lots of baby's breath. And I'm going to kiss this goodbye. All right. So now I have 1, 2, I think, and you can test this out. I can push these stems together, pull off the little bottom ones here that may end up being too bulky inside of my Tussie Mussie, and begin this way. And you fit it just the way you would fit a piece of lace or, you know, a piece of material. You just fit it. You tuck it in and you see how it looks. You try to keep it all on the same level if you possibly can. Oh, there's a little side piece I want to get rid of right there. And basically you encircle your roses and tulips and rosemary with the baby's breath. Just like that. So you make a little, you're working in concentric circles. And if it turns out that it's not a perfect circle, that's fine, because that's just the nature of holding flowers together. But another rubber band, just to hold everything in place. Now, you know, it is possible for those of you that are familiar with floral tape to do this with floral tape too. But this is a very nice way. And one of the nice things about rubber bands is that you can't do with floral tape, is that you can move rubber bands up and down the stems. So you can have a little tighter or a little bit looser. You can, it's very simple to do that. So then, that's pretty hot. Then Again, I can safely put that down without it falling apart. Turn my attention to the mini carnations, or what these used to be called were English border carnations. And again, taking this one stem, I'm going to deconstruct it. And right here, I'm going to snap it right there. And then here, there's another nice carnation right there. Dianthus is the Latin name for this. And there, that leaves me a third one. This actually is an herbal flower. Once upon a time, these little dianthus or English border carnations had a strong clove fragrance to them. It's been bred out of them now, but they had a very strong clove fragrance. And right through the 18th century, the common name for this particular flower was sops in wine, because the border carnations were used to soak in wine, and the fragrance, that wonderful clove fragrance from the border carnations, would go into the wine and make the wine more palatable. And also, this was used in medicine to make medicine more palatable. A bitter medicine would have the mini carnations, the border carnations soaked in it. Now, I have to tell you something about carnations. Can you all see how this stem is constructed? This is what's called a segmented stem. Do you see that there's a joint here, a joint here? There was a joint down here that I snapped off. Carnations snap very easily at their joints, but they also will snap very easily at their heads or at any joint if you're not extremely careful with them. So be delicate, be gentle as you're handling them, and if one of them, their head pops off, I think there'll be enough so that everybody can have a few. And if anybody has any heads that roll, take them home with you and float them in a pretty little container. All right. Never waste a good flower. And can you see what I'm doing now? I'm choosing these and I'm putting them again in a circle around the outside of the baby's breath, and I'm using the buds along with the open flowers, because buds will open, and besides which, buds are pretty. I think I'll put that one right in there. And again, I'm going to do a little bit of trimming here, just a little bit like that. Now come the last two pieces, and by the time you've had the experience of building this part of your Tussie Mussie, you're ready to move on to something a bit more difficult. And by the way, if we have, turns out that we have extra baby's breath, and we might have a little bit of extra baby's breath, you feel free as you're working, once everybody has all their flowers, if you need more flowers and they're more up here, they're all for you guys. I'm not taking them home with me. This is a scented geranium. I love this. This is a ginger geranium, a scented ginger geranium. And every stem of everything is different. No two stems are exactly alike. I pulled these at random. I only want this cluster up here. Now, on this stem, all the side leaves are short stemmed. So I'm not going to be able to get any extra mileage out of the side leaves, except I could take them home and dry them and crumple them up in a dish, and they would be incredibly fragrant and wonderful, and put them in a potpourri. But this is what I'm looking for, this top, just like that, because that I'm going to fit however I might be able to fit it, just like that. Gently doing it, because this stem can snap also. I know that from experience, because I did that with that one. It was like, oh no. But now, I notice on this stem, I've got one long stem there. Now that I might be able to use, and another stem of reasonable length there. But this one, I don't know. This is where you're going to have to use your judgment and just see if you can fit it all together. This is basically a puzzle. Now, for my taste, and I don't know if you can all see this or not, there are a couple of things here that I'm going to change. One is that this geranium leaf right here is sticking up, and for my taste, and this is just my taste, you don't have to agree with me, I'm going to snip that out because I'd rather not have it sticking up like that. This little one right here is in the way, I think, because I want to slide this in like that. There. Now I've reorganized a little bit some of the leaves, and I think I'll just pull this down a little bit further, and I'm holding it with my hand together and looking down at it, and that's pretty good. So I will hold this firmly and tightly, exactly where I want it, trim these stems, but now I have been given the gift of a long stem, and I don't want to waste that leaf. So I'm going to fit that one right back there where I think another leaf might be good, and I might try putting that one in there and seeing if it'll work. And I'm planning on putting a rubber band right up around the neck here to keep this tight, because that's how I like them to look. You can tell, I hope you're able to tell, I'm sure you're able to tell, that this is all an excellent example of beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I happen to like my Tussie Mussies to be, you know, sort of trim and a little tight, pulled together, but you might like yours looser, a little bit looser, a little bit more flowing, and that's fine if that's what pleases your eye, because as you're working, you want to remember that you are the one who's taking this home. You are the one that's living with it, and you're the one that needs to be able to look at it tomorrow morning and go, oh my God, I love that. Okay? So now I'm trimming that off at the end, but there's still one thing left here, and that is the fern. This is classic, very classic florist fern called leatherleaf or baker's fern. This is a native to the United States. It's a very nice fern that has been overused to the point of, oh my God. But I would like to have fern on, I have two stems here. I think we have a lot more fern, right? Do we?
Yeah.
Where did it?
It's what the apple
Oh,
was.
yeah, all right. Well, in that case, we have lots of fern. So I'm gonna go for it. I'm not even gonna try to use that. I'm just doing this. Off with your head. Because all I want is this top spray. Not interested in the rest of you, thank you very much. I want these 3 top sprays because I wanna do this. Just as if it was a piece of natural lace. I wanna put 1 fern, 2 ferns, well, and take those off too. 3 ferns. And then, looking and checking, I'm gonna slide this down just a little bit, like that. And that little bit of fern finishes it off quite nicely. And now, This carries a message of love and friendship, remembrance, loyalty, interest, remember, the fern is fascination, as well as friendship. And one more rubber band. And that now when you're done, this keeps flowers, it perks them up. This is those of you who are gardeners are probably familiar with foliar feeding. When you spray plant food on your plants and they absorb it through their petals and their leaves. Well, what you're doing here is just getting enough moisture on these leaves to revive the plant material. This plant material has been basically in surgery. It's basically been in the operating room. It's been reconstructed, it's been cut, it's been manipulated, and it needs a little bit of refreshing. And this is what you do to refresh it. Now, don't move quite yet because, and then I'll come around and help everybody and I'll get you your plant material. Here we have ribbons. And we could spend another hour and a half doing ribbons. But I just brought simple ribbons for tonight because, I think we have till 8 o'clock and then we all have to disappear and I'm still going to use this because I happen to like that. But this would be, oh, wait a minute, wait. This has some of the orange in it. Hello, yes. So all I do with this, who knew? No, I didn't. When I got the ribbons out last night, I had no idea what colors I was coming back with today from the flower market. And you just take a nice, what's that, a little over 2 feet?
Yeah.
And you simply lay it here. And these are all wired ribbons. Back when they were first introduced, we florists always referred to them as, would you like French ribbons on your bouquet? That's because it meant that you can manipulate the ribbon and it's not just going to hang there. And so I just made a knot like that, put it around, and then after the knot is made, then I do the bow. Or you could just leave the knot if you'd like to and have the ribbon hang down if you'd like. If we have time, you have time, and you are absolutely crazy about ribbon, you can use 2 or 3 different kinds of ribbon if you like. I don't mind. All this ribbon is here for you to use. And I will help you to the best of my ability to do that. So.
Is there any meaning to the different ribbons at all? Or?
Nope. At least not that I know of. But as you know, there's meaning to everything in life. So.
Yeah, if it's a black ribbon, it might mean.
Yeah. But anyway, so. Okay. Now, if you want to begin, who needs red scissors? Who needs them? There. There you are. All right. And then Annette, do you mind passing these around and people can point and you can give them 3 things? All right. Yeah. They can.
I'm so excited.
I'm so hungry.
You're hungry? You know, you're on to me. One of my favorite recipes has rosemary, thyme, and something else. And garlic, sauteed chicken. And I always add extra the thyme, rosemary, and what else is in there? There's one other. Sage. I think I've got sage. And I forget what they're called, but they're very simple recipe.
Let me take full responsibility.
Very good. And garlic.
There's that. Oh, and the rosemary.
And a little bit of
If I
tomatoes,
have fresh.
a little bit of tomatoes and make a sauce. Sure, it's on.
I don't have it on television.
And again. Oh, no, don't get us.
Good one.
Okay.
Yes.
So you have to punch these on.
This lady is sitting. Yeah. Just as long as you have enough.
She said 3, I thought it was 4 inches. That's color tulips.
I will have purple, please. And yes, I'm bringing my bees
You
on.
can actually start to trim these and get them ready. What color would you like?
Yeah, it was warm when she did it, but then when she put everything, like hug everything around
Do I push these side ones off?
If you can squeeze it together, then that's fine. If you'd like to do that. I'm gonna give everybody 2 skins of carnation to begin with, and then we'll see where that is.
What color tulips would you like? Ooh, that's a tulip. That's like orange.
And those of you who love to cook, this is what's left of the rosemary, so eyeball it, because it can go home with you.
The one I have has got some brown, like extra top parts.
Yeah, you know what mine does too.
Well, then you get another skin.
Ladies,
Get another tulips.
Thank you so much.
Oh, see? Uh-oh. Now that can go home. A little bit of a big. That was about the last thing I did before we left the house. Was to gather up all the odd bits that had fallen off.
I was gonna ask her because I wasn't sure myself. I don't know if that's, being a business and we're doing the right thing.
can you look back? Can you give her some too?
Yeah, does she know what she wants? I would like purple.
Yeah.
She does. She's a purple lady, right?
But you have to pinch that off, because that's tricky. Now, she said to pinch that.
All right, I'm gonna take it over so it'll be all.
Oh, no. You're gonna make photos?
You need.
I need some
carnation.
I know, she's like
No, just.
just like last time, huh?
But
How's
it's a
your
fun
stepping
thing to
stone?
do.
Oh, it's good.
The last, the purple, the rest of these are gonna have to take orange.
And they all like the same height. And then you can get rid of any wilty tops.
Oh, good. I'm gonna do it. But the thing is,
Don't worry about that.
there are more, so you can just have.
No worries.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're good.
Yep, it's all.
Start with your rosemary. Okay.
This one, height. Remember these?
All right, so.
Start with those. Put them all together. You get orange.
And a little bit. Now, you've got 3 stems, right?
So mine is way too long, I
All
think.
right,
No,
here's.
these are the carnations.
Oh, yeah, right. All right, and here's your.
He's passing one out.
That's right.
They go next.
Well, I'm gonna start separating my, like these, I'm gonna start taking them apart.
And these you
So
got
we'll get some of that done, while I'm sitting here chatting on your table. Favorite kind of thing, you know? When I'm not
I'll take one.
You're gonna want it to be right about there. I would actually take.
Well, let's make sure they're the right height together.
Yeah. I wasn't sure how.
Yeah, we don't have them.
Thank you.
Yes, white.
Is this too much?
Once you put it together, I think so. You're gonna bunch stuff right at the round it. You might, you might want to clean up just a little further down, maybe, because if it's too bulky in the center, you'll want to strip it down in the middle just a little more.
Plus, you don't need all that.
I don't even tie it off hair dry. I'm running in here like right out of the shower. I was so sweaty after being in the yard all day.
Take this. You don't need all that. Yeah, you can.
No, they need.
Oh, yeah, put down the scissors.
Take this off.
Give it like, yeah.
Okay,
You wanna do the other one? Oh, don't cut any more yet.
No, don't cut no more, honey.
Take one of those stems off.
I'm
sorry.
Oh,
I hit you, I'm sorry.
So you take this and you peel it right
yeah.
here.
Thank you.
So is this good? Are you gonna cut it?
No, don't cut it yet, honey.
No wonder she did it down there. Okay.
All three of these should be like half like this.
This one all like
Okay?
see at the same height.
So do it.
Take
And
this
then the
out.
bottom,
Like when
close.
you're making an arrangement, there's always something that I feel is missing.
Oh, wait a minute.
I would just elevate it just a little more. I don't know what that is.
But I'm missing I thought it was weird. I feel like Morticia or something doing that. The waste of perfectly good leaves.
Okay, is everybody here? No, you don't.
Okay.
You don't have to.
So then you cut it?
No. Well, yeah, you can cut it. You can do it now.
Cut it.
I know, because you don't have to put
And did you end up, I can't remember.
as it is. You're gonna wrap around. Yeah, those are the tulips. Spring
There you
roses.
go.
Happy flowers. So those guys.
Now put any
Well,
elastic
foundation.
around it.
These are the roses.
One more.
Those, yeah, that's the way to do it, absolutely. Yeah, with the flowers.
There.
Keep it separate from your neighbors.
Remember,
Okay.
ladies,
Sage.
as you're working, you want
I don't like
naked
it.
stems.
I don't like my sage.
Your rose
I mean, the rose
All right, the plant material's
I just
all
don't
above
like
your
it.
hand. You want all the stems to be clean of all leafy material, so it's naked stems. Oh, you don't have to be quite that.
Okay.
That's okay. That's okay.
Nancy, with the rosemary, should you have the 3 strands in the middle? Or did I happen to have 2?
Thank you.
Is that fine? Oh, actually, do it.
You know why? Because this one is too. I think that's why.
Yeah.
Didn't have.
Bring that all the way up.
Yeah.
Bring it all the way up.
Like those things.
Bring yours up a little bit further, honey.
Yeah, I like that.
The elastic, yeah, bring it up. Bring it up some more,
To the
honey.
inside so they can bunch up and do
Now,
like.
yeah, no, wait a minute.
Take the
Now
flopping
take
off.
the,
Yeah, I had some tips on it. I took the tips off.
I know.
So I decided just to try to make it.
Another piece of fern.
Get yours. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, is that what's comes next?
No, it's rosemary and then
Come
rose.
for you, Tina, Tori.
Wait, Anna's supposed to have 3?
How do you think so far?
I think that's great.
Whack a rubber
I keep
band.
forgetting, yeah.
Hey, the rubber band will make my sound. Yeah, oh, yeah. I realized they kept wrong. Now I realize.
That is My grandmother used
mine
to,
first.
wow.
Not,
It's
it's
okay,
okay,
not
not
share, it's okay. If you just did a bag, you just wet the towel and then wrap it
Could I
around
have
after we
everybody's
could travel
attention
home
for a
with it.
minute?
But I never thought of
When
like
you're
using
putting
it
your
for
rubber
this,
bands
you know.
on, remember, you're not strangling. You're not, this is not a punishment. This is simply to hold the stems in place. So just a couple of twists with the rubber band.
Most certainly.
You don't need to.
Couldn't this be another way of conveying a meaning?
Well,
I could strangle
Oh,
you.
it definitely could be another way to convey the meaning. Absolutely.
Are you saying
Okay, I just did mine, hold on.
darling? You know when you think that we're heading
How do you like it? Was he excited?
There's only one thing. Cut it same place where the other one. The last one had around it. So I mean, you're just gonna wrap it like this a couple times.
Nothing like hers.
I know.
I don't have a circle yet. I have no circle. Everything's crashing through the circle.
When I saw them,
Now
are they going to say no?
Okay, wait a minute, wait a minute. No, we need a tulip. What are the tulips? Yeah, those images. What did you give me? You get me purple?
You get orange by the big.
I got purple. All right. Well, blue, but I like it.
Everybody needs help, let me know.
You take off this part.
Yeah, take off the leaves.
I did that.
Wait a minute, maybe I can, maybe. Yes, I do, yes. Just made it, just focus.
It's in the kids' probably break.
I know, exactly.
Oh, babies.
Hold on, I get a break my hair.
To make your life easier.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Tori, whenever you have a
Doing good, honey.
Tori, whenever you have a feeling, it never really happens.
Too short.
Was it?
Is it these?
Let's see. Baby's breath.
Tulip and baby's breath.
I just cracking myself up over there.
What'd you lose? No, I only got 3 too.
Alright, so now I got two together, two on top of each other, which is not how they're supposed to be. No, they're supposed to be separated.
Okay, come on.
No circle here.
How's that? Good? Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to keep them in check.
Rein them in. Very hard.
Oh, that
It's hard when the teacher makes
What are
it.
you doing? Oh, that's nice, honey. You're doing a good job.
Well, I caught you in the film, I'm sorry.
Now what's next?
Okay, put your ribbon around. I mean, put your elastic. Oh, you did. Oh,
See? They could probably show us that.
Dory, honey.
Victoria.
She made it.
Oh, Victoria. How are you doing?
Okay, no baby carnations.
She showed
Yeah, no, it's baby carnations. I gotta get mine. You're gonna have to feel it.
Okay, now, like,
Sandy, may I give you your?
Is that the best part, is the cutting?
that's what I think.
What'd you say?
Yes.
Okay,
Gotta find, yeah. I hope you're not looking at mine for real. I want to
can you go to the flower market in Boston? You have to be in the business. They must ask you to show some type of ID or some such thing, yeah. I was kinda always wondering about that. Yeah.
all this big.
I don't know.
You know, I'm at the point I don't care.
I'm like,
Shoving it around there.
yeah, no, put it down so we can.
Anything like hers.
We're gonna have the loose design, I think.
Mine's gonna be very loose.
Yeah, so is it mine. Look at, they pop around.
Oh, really?
Megan, why don't you make one?
Okay, I'm coming
Take
to
it
you.
to your mom, you know Mother's Day's coming, right?
I already have a present.
Oh, you're so such a wonderful kid. My kids will have to remind them like 5 or 6 times. You know Mother's Day's coming. More of a haircut over here.
You know, the stuff in the middle that was supposed to be really tall, it's like
It went down there, right?
Yeah, yours is a reverse order.
Well, they have all type of plants and have flowers and everything.
Afternoons, are these?
Let's see. Check my name. Mini carnations, yes.
What do you do? Take off these flowers?
I'm so beyond it.
You take off the
I'll put it in a half hour
I'm gonna try
ago.
not to, well, maybe.
and do it because we can treat these.
Yeah, you do. You might have to.
I buy these.
I buy babies, huh?
Oh.
I buy babies. Yeah, how's that?
I cut.
Okay.
I demand to cut.
Now cut. Okay, now I get to do mine here.
You listen, you follow directions.
Do you want these that will just open?
Yes, you want those, honey. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because when you put them in the water, they'll open.
Yes.
So you have
And
roses
spring.
going all the way around.
Sometimes they just die.
Here's the magic.
Like some that my
I can hear these two over here.
just like some that my mom takes care of. Are you sure she takes care of them? If they die? That's
Questionable.
You've seen a lot of
These
them.
girls are funny, huh?
They really isn't any.
I can tell why.
Cindy's such a drain, so you can't tell.
Remember how she just placed them nicely and they went around?
I know.
But Tiana, she went to the
Underneath,
grocery
and she got rid of some of the
Don't make them die.
Can you get rid of some more?
Okay, let's go.
I'll put a brown on it. That's what you tell her.
I gotta put my little thing on.
Tiana, want it.
Okay, now
I have one to put
mini, okay, I got my list. Mini carnations.
Yeah.
I'm getting there.
I think I almost did it. Almost.
I know this one has it right here. I know.
Oh, cut them into smaller pieces and then we'll put some around.
Yeah.
I thought I lost this.
Put that down, because you already got it. So you just take these off. Take these leaves off.
There's no way to mess it up. It's supposed to
This
be
one?
like whatever your message.
Yeah, take that off. Yeah, you take that, and then you keep those on your scissors.
Excuse me.
Oh, just black.
People start joking
on the door.
This
Yeah, you go like a little lower
Too funny.
from tulips, and you go around.
And in the beginning, that was the flowers that were dry.
Only two people in this group got one.
I was,
A better shot.
this was like, when I was,
Yeah, I didn't read very well.
we came up with, we all
I don't think we have to worry about anything on the floor.
making all
I thought maybe it's alright.
somebody would come to work and they would just.
Like maybe it's. This.
Okay.
Lovely idea.
More than just. Was this
You're gonna be.
Geranium? I still want to call it. Okay, I still want to call it ladies' man.
You know what I think? So regular ladies' man, so it's all the same. And it grows probably about this high. On top of it. I absolutely love it. When the raindrops go in the little.
Like those diamond bag on the edge.
Like a roll up $10 bill or $1 bill to make it look
I've never seen it.
They play it safe now, Mark. They don't play any of those really fancy.
No, they have the
They
normal,
use-
yeah, they have the normal
Yeah.
stuff there.
Yeah, I know. Isn't it? Go in a circle. All right.
Does she grow down?
Right.
This little guy.
Very
hard to get over here.
You guys are good. Okay, did you roll?
This is what you do when one falls down. Don't come wear, but you wear flowers.
These are blossoms I have.
Like hers did, hers was so pretty.
I need to know if it's native for.
We're doing.
More on the table, yeah.
I need, see on this side right here, I can't have another little piece. Oh, you getting some too?
Okay, now what do you do with these?
They might have one of our roll
Yeah,
calls,
what do
too.
you do with these?
Thank you so much.
Okay. Good, I forgot what she said. Start trimming. The rosemary smells so good.
What do you do?
I'm not eating anything.
It's gonna be.
So
Rosemary.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
I got
They will. I got another whole one here. How's that?
Yes.
Doesn't have that round look.
No, it doesn't.
I hate to be the bearer of bad
This is a
news.
pretty.
No, it
Sure,
doesn't.
it has to have the round.
that.
Yeah, I think it's whatever we think is pretty.
That's
Whatever
right.
comes out.
Yeah, basically.
What do you do next?
Yeah, that's done. Okay, wait a minute, honey. I don't know yet.
Then do you like put
I might
it?
need her.
Leaves the flower.
Ladies, as you're working, if you need to use a rubber band per stem, that's just fine. We are very rich in rubber bands.
Wait a minute.
Would that be like set it over here?
Well, wait a minute. You gotta.
No, thank you. I didn't want to be in your way.
You're not at all.
Like better. You already trained her.
You're supposed to.
She's coming, honey. She's coming.
Now you.
this is a
I have to switch going. Oh, yeah.
The only problem is with the stone, if you hit with it, it'll be like.
Right, so but are you maybe breath left?
Just a little, yeah.
Now, she said just use the top. So most of these get cut.
Okay.
I like my
What you're going to do, you're interested in this right up here. Okay, wait a minute,
All this, I'm
you
gonna
can pull up, and this is, these are used great. Very practical. Just do this.
I'm gonna bring that.
Pulling this off like this. Now, and then you take this. Oh, and you see this little, okay, wait a minute, I'll get it. You see this little piece right there? Yeah. I'm gonna remove that, and then I'm gonna slip that right in there. All right.
This is the slipping part I couldn't
Slip that right in there. Now take it, oh, and that,
Remove
that. Snip it, snip it. With the scissors.
I can do it.
Okay, you do it. Okay.
You've got much better
This right here.
Everyone's looks different too.
They do. Yeah.
This one is no.
Oh, I need another elastic. Oh, this one.
Take the rubber band and go up.
Yeah, you don't have to do like they tied it down so it's like a 3-point. Yes.
Short enough.
Maybe I have a couple.
You're right. And then spat. And you just want to put.
I feel like I'm wasting time doing this, driving.
Oh, that one's perfect, yeah.
Guess what? Oh, this is, this, I don't want to sit down at all, but I have to look and see.
Sometimes turning it in a different direction.
I'm gonna have to.
Now, do you see how this looks?
And then I don't have hardly any.
You see how that?
I think we only got
I'm gonna see if I can flip it
Still too big though.
Oh, that's pretty.
This is too big now. You could try getting rid of like a couple more,
You know what
bring
I'm
it
saying?
in.
So I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, the one underneath it.
And then, let's see.
She's got one with like only 8 and 4 on one side. Well, that was a good try because it was broken.
I may need to get you a yeah. I'm gonna see if I can find that. There we go.
Oh, that looks really good.
That's one of my Oh, it just never, I was so careful.
Then, water deeper. I'm gonna give this back to you and just take the rubber band.
I'm
put it
gonna
right
do it,
around
yeah.
here. And put it
Yeah,
well, see, that's what I'm saying. It's not all stop here, or you can add.
Windy, okay. I'm Tony. That's what I was asking Tony here, like, what's the
because we were all just trying to
Yes, now.
I'll give you another one.
And then those two ladies over there, and then
more fern?
Lots more.
I just broke mine.
Lots
better than ours, right?
I know. Okay,
Boy,
that
I just
one.
set myself up for failure.
Wait a minute.
You're done, that's beautiful.
That is pretty, very pretty.
so that there, so you've got the leaves on. Yeah. Now you're gonna tuck this one on the other. So that there's a whole bunch of one.
Thank you.
Oh, I have a tipped fern too. Are there more ferns over there? No. Oh, ferns.
Plenty on the table though? Because there was more brought.
She has, right behind, I'm gonna go get some.
What? Hers here? But whose turn is this? There's more. There's fern everywhere too.
There's some on the table right behind her.
I'm gonna have rubber bands hanging off mine.
No, you don't have to.
That's part of the design.
Don't take it out. You just put it on there.
And make up.
There you go. Right here. That's all you need. It's like right here, honey.
Wow. Like Tiana.
Like your mom did, 4 or 5 on each side.
Have you got it?
The rubber band
I don't like
in
it.
it for me.
Yeah.
So I didn't get stuck on.
Just around the other side. It's gonna get.
Gets hard.
That's it.
Okay.
Everything falls out too, because it's not long enough. I tried to put some short ones in.
Okay.
Put some real short ones in.
Take to find glasses now.
I know, we're gonna, no, we have some, it's just, everything's on top.
On top of that.
That's what I just said.
Yes, I know.
Look at all the elastic bags. I know, I feel so many. She was so right.
How you doing?
When they're done, they go back.
I think I need this
Finished. Me too.
Oh, you guys finished, all right. Let me see. Oh, let me see yours, honey.
Very
Beautiful. You can give that to Mussie, honey.
You guys want ribbons back in the 80s?
Yeah, you want ribbon, honey?
They don't have anything and they're on the commercial.
Yeah, go ahead, honey.
And you tried it.
One of my kids
I know. I'm on my last one.
Did you return them?
No. But that's probably what everybody wears.
You need some more. I mean, I think she has.
And then we're embarrassed.
Bill still want to get up on my plate.
Yeah, there's one right here. Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
Come on TV.
This is my third one.
You're supposed to throw them on the ground and all the body parts come off and so on. I called them up and I got my money back. This is not a toy that you can play with. This is really
I like that.
But it was just funny because they're practicing they were playing on the phone on the ground.
Hey, you know,
Where's mine? No, I think I'm gonna cut these
exactly.
Sorry. I just cut
Who needs me? Anybody here need me?
Oh, how are you doing?
How do you do that?
How are you doing?
Can you look at mine and tell me whether or not it's right?
What's mine?
Yes. I knew somebody would want it.
Yes.
That color.
He's not wanted, yeah.
If you want more of that,
Oh, okay.
Play with the ribbon all you want.
And you can make little cards to go with them.
So
different than there we go. It was amazing. That's Tori. Yeah.
Tori, do you want to hold yours up and I'll just spray it for you?
Okay.
if I made one, I could just say, list the flowers.
I didn't sign up.
Well, you did.
You can do whatever you like.
Okay, all right.
No, this is all within the public domain. I mean, you can, it's for anybody who would like to use it to go ahead and use it. And should you decide you need to change it for any reason, the way they did in the language of flowers,
Goes with your orange tulips.
Nobody will be
I'm
knocking
meeting
on
a
the
girl
door.
for lunch tomorrow at noon, so.
Now, I have some ends here.
Make her go to
I shouldn't
tea.
have these, right?
well,
It's at
that's all right.
12:30, yeah.
Oh my gosh, so much fun.
I know it, it's bigger. That sounded really good, yeah.
Okay. Do you want ribbon, Vivian?
Yeah.
You want some ribbon? Yeah, well, what kind do you want?
There's light pink, there's that, there's gold, there's color hides that I have ones.
Everyone in it that wants to be in it. Oh, we're doing little groups, okay. All right, okay.
Come on, Lisa, where are you?
Next little group.
Okay,
I know it.
we'll get over there, we'll get over here. Okay.
Forever and ever.
Hey, girls, right here. Come on, girls.
Okay. Where do we put our bouquets?
Yeah.
You can put the scissors away, the clippers.
Hey, yeah.